We just want to jump right into it because I know that our audience has been waiting with bated breath ever since I announced this morning on Twitter that we would be having on the author of the Google Memo, the infamous Google Memo, the most important document since the Magna Carta. James Damore is joining us right now. He, of course, was a senior engineer at Google until he made the mistake of penning an eminently correct scientific treatise on the differences between men and women and why that may contribute in part to discrepancies in terms of the levels of employment and wages at Google between women and men. And then, of course, Google found out about his wrongthink and he was fired. James, thanks so much for joining the program.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, so let me just jump right in here, and I want to ask you, to start, you've alleged that there's actually some illegal activity going on at Google, because that's why presumably they should be in trouble for firing you, because it's an at-will state. California's an at-will state. Anybody can be fired for any reason, but according to the National Labor Relations Board, you cannot be fired if you're whistleblowing. So what is the purported illegal activity that's going on at Google that you were attempting to expose?
So part of it is that they treat people differently in the hiring process depending on what their race or gender is. And some teams will preferentially choose certain groups.
Okay, so you've also said that they have these sort of super secret diversity sessions in which they discuss all of this. Can you take us inside one of those? What does that look like from the inside?
It's just a group of all these people talking about the benefits of diversity and how much they love diversity and all the sexism and racism that happens and how we have to try to fix that.
Okay, we know that Google has spent some $265 million apparently trying to increase their diversity ratios, and this, of course, has been a wild fail. Well, I've read your memo at least 3 times now because I just want to make sure I'm not crazy, because if you watch the media coverage of your memo, it is not in any way related to the actual content of the memo. The media has made a bunch of different claims about the memo. They've said that you were saying in the memo that women are biologically unfit for tech. That was a chyron on CNN. Were you making the claim, James Damore, Google Memo guy, were you making the claim that women are biologically unfit for the tech industry?
No, I was just trying to explain why we see a disparity in the population of people that are interested in working in tech.
And you can see that right there. I mean, I'm quoting your memo back to you here, but it says, I'm not saying that all men differ from all women in the following ways so that these differences are just. I'm simply stating that the distribution of preferences and abilities of men and women differ in part due to biological causes. This has been translated by the left into you are saying that women ought not work in tech or they're unqualified for tech. You weren't even saying, when you have an entire section of your memo promoting the idea that there should be more women in tech, and you offered a bunch of ways that you think that the tech community could be made more welcoming to women. So are you in favor of more women in tech?
Yeah, I mean, I like women, right? So, and if we're in general just trying to get more people interested in tech, then that would be one way to do it.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about something that the YouTube CEO, a woman named Susan Wojcicki, that she wrote this morning over at Forbes. She wrote a piece at Forbes about the horrors of your memo and how they had obviously emotionally crippled her young daughter, who apparently came up to her and said, "Mom, is it true that there are biological reasons why there are fewer women in tech and leadership?" Now, it seems to me that that was not exactly the claim you were making. Is it true there are biological reasons why there are fewer women in tech and leadership? What's your response to the YouTube CEO?
Well, I mean, to me, at least, it felt a lot like what Piers Morgan was trying to do to you on his show by taking a little kid out and saying, "Oh, aren't you sorry for him?" Right? I mean, they're just trying to guilt me.
So I do want to
misrepresent what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about what the political representation is like inside Google, because there was a poll, sort of an informal poll that came out this morning that said that 56% of people who were responding to this online poll who are working at Google said that they were against your firing. Number one, are there a lot of people inside Google who have been expressing support for you?
Yeah, since I wrote it, there have been many people that privately messaged me and said, "Yeah, I support you. I agree. This is a real problem."
Do you think that Google is biasing their search results and the way they do business toward the left? Do you think that how they're treating you is reflective of how they do business as a company?
I don't know about biasing search results, but they may definitely be biasing who they do business with.
Okay, so and inside the company itself, do you think that there is a obvious political preference for folks on the left? If you had written a memo about how Black Lives Matter was the cause of the day, and that really mattered more than anything else. I mean, there are all these sort of internal Google chats, apparently, that you're a part of, these Google message boards. Have you ever seen stuff like that, politically oriented material toward the left, and has that ever been a problem for anyone?
Yeah, so you can openly shame white people or all men, and we do this in our company-wide meetings. So, yeah, there's definitely a bias towards a certain movements. Like we had a whole TGIF that was for the Black Lives Matter movement.
And can you give me some example? I mean, you say you have company-wide meetings where people are shamed. What does that sound like? Like, can you give me an example of some stuff that people have said?
So, one example was just that someone wrote a question and then it had something to do with gender. She was a woman, and out of 300 votes, 50 of them were downvoted. And she was complaining about how she didn't feel included at Google because she got 1/6 of them downvotes. And there were many other just random examples.
Okay, so with all of this said, number one, I think you have a lot of broad public support, obviously. But what do you think this says about the left's views of science? Because there's an article in Slate, for example, today saying science is bad now. We've now found that science is bad. Susan Wojcicki, as I say, she said at the very end of her screed, she said that these are questions that shouldn't even be asked. This is a direct quote from her piece at Forbes today. She said, for instance, what if we replace the word women in the memo with another group? What if the memo said that biological differences amongst Black, Hispanic, or LGBTQ employees explained their underrepresentation in tech and leadership roles? Would some people still be discussing the merit of the memo's arguments, or would there be a universal call for swift action against its author? What do you make of the left's essentially saying that questions can never be asked about topics where the answer may not favor what the left wishes it to say?
Yeah, they're at least just putting their ideology before truth in these cases, and she's just trying to guilt me by association with like Nazis or something. And when one group is just trying to guilt you and call you names and the other is actually using evidence and science, you really know which side is actually seeking truth.
And this, I think, was one of the points that is why this story has captured the imagination, is because the memo itself is really moderate in tone and tenor. Even people like Kirsten Powers, who are on the left, have said they really don't see what the big problem here is or why people are going nuts over it. And yet you step out of line at a company like Google. And the reason people are freaked out about this is obviously Google's a super powerful company. But this happens inside Hollywood all the time. This happens inside journalistic institutions all the time, obviously. So James Damore, Google memo guy, what comes next for you? I've offered you off the air. I offered you a columnist gig to write about STEM issues, particularly with regard to differences between men and women in social science data and all of this. But I assume that you have job offers that are coming in from a wide variety of sources. What comes next for you now that Google is no longer in your future?
Yeah, I'm still evaluating all my options. It's been a really busy past few days.
And I've heard also that you were offered a position by WikiLeaks. I would urge you not to take that. I think that is probably a bad career move, but it's up to you. You're a free man. Thank you for writing this memo, because I think obviously when more truth is promulgated, it's a better country. And please keep us updated as far as your own lawsuit. Is that actually going to happen, or is that just a possibility at this point, a lawsuit against Google? Yeah,
it's a possibility. I'm definitely pursuing it, though.
Okay. So keep us updated on that. And obviously, we are rooting for you as far as the whistleblowing aspect of this. And please keep writing true things, even though there's pretty tremendous blowback. Thanks so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. That's James Damore. He's the senior engineer at Google who penned that diversity memo regarding why Google should change its practices if it wants to attract more women, actually. And he got shellacked for it by the left and fired from Google for that. James Damore, senior engineer at Google, thanks so much.